from the Hilltop. Welcome to today's Alumni Career Services webinar, sponsored by the Georgetown University Alumni Association. We're so glad to have you on the line. Thanks for taking time out of your workdays to connect virtually with fellow Hoyas for today's webinar, Job Search Hacks, 5 Ways to Conduct Successful Informational Interviews, presented by Hoya friend and longtime webinar presenter, Hallie Crawford. Hallie is a certified career coach, speaker, author, and national career expert based in Atlanta, Georgia. She's regularly featured in the media and has undergraduate and graduate degrees from Vanderbilt University and the University of Illinois. For the past 19 years, her team of coaches has helped people find jobs that make them want to jump out of bed in the morning and go to work. I'm Sarah Smith, Senior Associate Director of Alumni Career Services, and I'll be facilitating today's webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to share just a few webinar tips and reminders. First, this webinar is being recorded, and the recording of this webinar broadcast will be made available on our Alumni Career Services YouTube channel within 48 hours of today's broadcast. You'll receive the link to the webinar recording in a webinar follow-up email, which will also contain a post-webinar survey for you to take, information on upcoming webinars, and more ways to stay connected to the Hilltop. Hallie will answer questions at the end of her webinar. Please send in your questions as you have them throughout the webinar presentation using the questions area of the GoToWebinar control panel. And finally, if you're having any technical difficulties or other issues, please submit those concerns to me via the questions area of the GoToWebinar control panel as well. Without further ado, I'm so pleased to welcome and turn things over to Hallie. Hallie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. That was perfect. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. We greatly appreciate it. I know a lot of you are probably working from home and are doing a lot of these kinds of online learning. And we greatly appreciate your time taking the time out to be with us today to talk about how to conduct successful informational interviews. I'm Hallie Crawford, as Sarah said. I'm a certified career coach and the founder of my own organization. And we have been coaching and training for just over 19 years now. So I know I might sound kind of like I'm 12. That's one of the things. My voice is young, I realize, but there's a lot more gray hair going on in here. I'm actually 47, turned 47 this year. And I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with you all today because I am passionate about what I do. And especially during times like these, we are trying to help job seekers, but also people who are employed get what they need in terms of professional support with whatever situation is going on for them due to the coronavirus crisis. So one of the things that I did want to kind of start out with, just because I want to be mindful of, we know that there are so many different scenarios and kind of difficult situations that are going on for people, that if you take a look at this slide here just really quickly, this is our homepage of our website, but just FYI, we are providing a lot of additional content and just trying to pump out as much information as we can on our career blog at the top here of our website, as well as on our LinkedIn page, etc., to help everyone with whatever is going on for them due to this crisis, professionally. And so just wanted you all to know that we're trying to provide as much support as we can. And we know that Georgetown obviously is trying to do that too. So I wanted to bring that up. And I truly do believe that as we're talking today, the advice and tools that I'm going to be giving you are still relevant during this time. So just so you know, as we're talking today, a couple quick things. I will be kind of framing out, the advice and tools that we're discussing to the, sign of the time, so to speak, what's going on in today's world. So I will be kind of talking about what's relevant for today, specifically related to informational interviews, as well as giving the general advice that we normally give. And just by the way, quickly too, if I look to the left, that's just, I've got split screen here today, so I'm advancing my slides. And I know I have my old school telephone headset here. I've been finding that I think GoToWebinar is really good, but like with Zoom and kind of other platforms, they're just getting overloaded. So trying to be as safe as possible with the audio. So here is our agenda for today. We're going to talk about what informational interviews are, really quick description there because a lot of you probably know what they are from a basic standpoint already. We're going to discuss what some of the obstacles are that people encounter, either why they don't conduct informational interviews in the first place or they're resistant to do so. A lot of our clients will tell us that, or the obstacles that they encounter, why they're not as successful with them as they could be, how to conduct them effectively, 5 ways to do that. And as Sarah said, we will be doing Q&A at the end of our session today. Just as a quick reminder, there will be a recording of this session and you will get that. If anyone would like a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, please feel free to email us. If you just take a look at this slide here, our email address to ask any questions that you have after the presentation or anything else that you need, copy of the slides, etc., please don't hesitate to email us at admin@halliecrawford.com. Happy to answer those questions for you and provide additional information. So informational interviews defined. Let's start with that just very briefly. It's a one-on-one conversation with someone who, by the way, is either in an industry or in a role or works at an organization that you would like to pursue or work at. So there's kind of like 3 reasons, if you will, to pursue or conduct an informational interview, okay? And there's lots of different reasons here listed on this slide. So it can help you decide on your next career path if you're thinking, okay, I might want to go do this after things have settled down. You know, I've reevaluated what's really important to me and I want to make a career change. An informational interview can help you find out a little bit more about what that career is actually like versus you making assumptions or wondering what it is. And also it can give you information about how to implement that change. You know, what's some advice that I would need to make that transition effectively. It can be useful for job seekers. It's obviously a really good way to expand their network and network their way into a specific organization, role, or industry. It's a good opportunity for you to practice your interview skills in a little bit less formal of a way, a little bit less pressure there. And also, it can give you really good information. One of the questions that we will normally have our clients ask people in an informational interview, especially if they're in job search mode or specifically for that situation, is how can I put my best foot forward in my search? Do you have any just kind of quick tips or advice about what I need to do to, you know, market myself more effectively, okay? And just by the way, too, I know most of you have this scenario. My son is here, you know, off of school or homeschooling, and also I am working from home, have my dog. So just if we get interrupted, I'll handle that and just asking for your patience in advance. Informational interviews, what they are and what they aren't is what's going to be on the next slide. So if you take a look at this slide, an informational interview is a good chance for you to really learn like what a typical day is like in that industry or within that field or within that role or within that organization. And also, ideally, you can find out more about opportunities that exist at that company that you may not know about otherwise. That's the hidden job market. Gives you the inside perspective before you accept a job offer. So in some cases, an informational interview is really good to, like, after you've gotten an interview, let's say, to learn a little bit more about what it's really like to work there and if you want to accept. Good chance to make a connection, a new connection within that industry, et cetera. It's a good way to find other people to network with, because one of the questions we always want people to ask at the end is there anyone else that you think I could talk to? And finally, it's a good chance for you to practice your interview skills, like we said before. So what I'd like to do, if we can, Sarah, is let's go ahead and do this first poll. How many people on the call today have conducted what they would consider a successful informational interview? And while you are participating in this poll, everybody, I did want to just share a little bit of a ray of hope during this coronavirus crisis. So I'll say this, Sarah, and then if you can share the results in just a second verbally, that'd be great, because I can never find them on the screen effectively, is that we have found, just so you all know, we've got a client who got a job offer last week, and we had to speak with her yesterday about negotiating for that offer in Chicago. Another one who had an interview this morning at a packaging company. The first one was at a nonprofit in Evanston, Illinois. Second one is at a packaging company, as you can imagine. They're doing well with, delivering that kind of thing. And we also had, we have another client who has had 3 interviews in the past few weeks. The point is, I want you all to know that, yes, we realize that things are really, really difficult for a lot of people. And again, that's why we're trying to share as much information as possible. But just so that you all know that the things that we're hearing too is that hiring is more like ebbing and flowing for a lot of places too. It's not just totally stopped. Yes, there are hiring freezes, but we have actually heard in the past week or so that some of those are starting to ease up a little bit. We've had clients starting jobs even during in the midst of this crisis and all of that. So please take heart with your search. Please do conduct these informational interviews, because in some ways this is a good time to be talking with people, because some people have a little more downtime. We're at home, or whatever it is, and they want to connect with people because we can all feel so isolated. So we don't want you to stop with the informational interviews. We just want you to be a little bit more patient with people getting back to you and that kind of thing. Okay. So Sarah, if you could share this, the results of this poll, that would be great. You guys might have seen my son in the background. He says hello. So Sarah, if you can share those results, that'd be great.
Yes, for sure. So the question was, have you conducted a successful informational interview, trying to get a sense of who we have on the line? 48%, so almost half of our audience, Hallie, said that yes, they have. 22% said no, and then 30% said, I'm not sure if it was successful or not. Thanks, guys.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, no, and Sarah, thank you for that, because I do think that sometimes people are like, gosh, I'm not sure if it worked or not, like whether you heard back from them or not, or whatever came out of it. Sometimes we're uncertain about whether it's successful, and that's part of what we'll be talking about today, so you'll kind of get a sense of how to gauge that. And what I'm thinking too is I ought to hire my son to do something here. He could be really good entertainment during these. All right. So just FYI, so as we talked about, we want you to consider conducting these during the course of this crisis even, and just realizing again that, people just may not get back to you as quickly as normal. It's almost like a little bit like during holiday time when it would be that same kind of scenario. What an informational interview is not, it's not a chance for you to tell someone, everything about yourself and just, unload on them or vent about why you're frustrated about your job search. You don't want to take too much of their time. You want to stick to the time allotted that you guys agreed to. You don't want to ask for a job right then and there. If the conversation is going in that direction, absolutely ask about it. And absolutely you can let them know, I would love to be considered for a position at your organization, or I would love to work there, something like that, completely fine. But you're not there ideally to get a job right then necessarily, or ask for the job, I should say. If you got a job right then, obviously that would be fantastic, but asking for it. You want to let them know, I'm looking for and asking for information, not asking you to get me a job. And you also want to make sure that you don't slack off or be too casual about your career goals. So like we said earlier, yes, it is a chance to kind of practice with a little bit less pressure, but we do want you to act like it's an actual interview, so that you dress professionally even when it's over Zoom video or whatever it is, and you act as if, it's a professional meeting. You have an agenda, you keep time for them, et cetera, et cetera. We have found, if you take a look at this next slide, that informational interviews still are one of the most underutilized job search tools, and career transition tools, we should say here too, in people's job search, or, determining the right career direction or making that transition. And 9 times out of 10, our clients will tell us when we ask them, when we begin coaching with them right away, we talk to them about what their obstacles are and kind of what gets in the way for them. 9 times out of 10, they tell us that they are their biggest obstacle. It's not something external, okay? So some of the obstacles that people tell us, oh, these things are for young people. I shouldn't be doing this at my age. Some people feel like, oh, I'm too shy. They don't want to ask for help. They don't want to look like they don't know what they're talking about. And a lot of people are still asking us, understandably, well, no one's hiring during the COVID crisis. Well, I gave you some great examples of actually a lot more people are than we think. By the way, these are not just for young people. I have had senior level VPs conduct informational interviews with people at their same level at other organizations with great success. So please know that you handle it professionally, obviously, and you do things in the right way, but they are not just for younger people or people that are just starting out in their career or recent college grads. The reason why they're so important, as we all know, that the majority of jobs are landed through the hidden job market. And these are unadvertised positions that are found through either headhunters, recruiters, or through networking. And as we're talking about today, informational interviews, great way to network, expand your network, put your foot out there, and or put your name out there, I should say, and kind of get your foot in the door, okay? So here are the 5 ways to conduct these effectively. So go ahead and get out your pen and paper, if you would, everybody, and go ahead and write these down. These are kind of the basic steps that we want to think about. Establishing and finding those connections, setting up and preparing for the informational interview, conducting them effectively, obviously, staying in touch with them afterwards, but also staying organized with your whole informational interview efforts, if you will, because I don't know about you all, but, you know, we forget what so-and-so said versus what this other person said and, you know, how we're supposed to follow up, et cetera. And we do have some tools that will help you stay organized as well. So first of all, let's talk about connections. So first of all, we want to look at, and if you take a look, I would say on the left-hand side here, the first 3 would kind of be the warmest leads, okay? So you obviously, with informational interviews and trying to find connections, you want to start with warm leads. So friends, friends of friends, family members, and also LinkedIn connections, okay? So the warmer leads are the places you want to start with first, because obviously they're more likely to get back with you in a timely manner, et cetera, et cetera. We also want you to think about LinkedIn groups, though. So if you take a look at this next slide here, kind of on the left in the middle, LinkedIn groups, especially during times like these, can actually be really helpful because we can't get out there and network at events. So leveraging LinkedIn groups instead, I don't know how many of you all do this at all, but we have actually had clients establish really good, solid connections with people by starting to participate in industry-specific groups on LinkedIn. The way that you find those, just by the way, and we want you to do this with your Georgetown Alumni Association too. We want you to find their LinkedIn group, and Sarah, you can talk about this when we get to the Q&A if you'd like to, because your Alumni Association is a big way to find people. We want you to find that group for Georgetown so that you can start to look through people there to reach out to and set up time with. And then also LinkedIn groups should be industry specific or maybe even like role specific. And the way that you find them is in the search bar, as if you were going to find people at the top. Instead, there's a little caret on the right where you can say people or jobs. There's a button that, or a drop-down item that says groups. And LinkedIn groups we find are actually really good for networking, especially when it needs to be online like it is these days. Also think about networking groups that you've attended in the past and association meetings or associations that you belong to. If they have an online directory, great place to find some of those connections. The way or how you can conduct these would be obviously over the phone, Skype, FaceTime, Zoom, free conference calling. There's tons of free conference calling services out there, just by the way. They can be conducted via email. We don't necessarily recommend that. That's kind of the lowest priority, so to speak, or the least appealing option, just because then you can't have that back and forth. And during these times, everyone, we absolutely would recommend trying to do a video call with people, because that can help kind of take the place of the in-person networking and establish a little bit more of a solid connection because you've had that quote unquote FaceTime. Just so you know too, one of the things we're finding with our clients is that they have a couple of different kind of either conference call options like freeconferencecall.com, when sometimes their cell phones aren't working as well, because we have had issues with, for example, clients trying to call us and their cell phone, just all of the software and the networks are getting kind of bogged down with so many people working from home. So you may want to have a couple of different options, just by the way, to get in touch with people and to be able to follow up with them. The next thing you want to do, step number 2, obviously, is to set it up. Let them know you're looking for information, not a job, like we said. We like it big key point. When our clients send their informational interview contacts, these are the questions I'd like to ask you, and it's 4 or 5 and that's it. What I love about this is when people do this with me and have done it in the past, it means so much to me and makes me think that much more highly of that person, for lack of a better way to say it. It shows them that you're prepared, that you're going to use their time wisely, you're not going to talk their ear off for 2 hours, and that they're going to be able to help you. So you give them a chance to think about what their answers might be. So when someone sends me these questions in advance like this, it's great, because then I know I can really spend that time wisely and help them, because I've had a chance to kind of think about what they need, you know, assistance with. And let them know in advance too that you intend to keep it brief and keep it at that time frame. 10 to 15 minutes. They could give you 20 minutes. It could be 30 minutes. Get clear in advance with them and on the phone again when you get on the line with them. How much time do you have? I just wanted to be sure, so that you're mindful of their time. And you are in charge of keeping the time, by the way, okay? And going through the agenda, you can drive the conversation more than you think, kind of like you can with a real interview. Have them, or you be prepared, I should say too, once after you check in with how much time they have, make sure that you're prepared for additional questions beyond just that 5 questions though, just in case. Have those ready, because we have had clients, you know, set it up for around 20 minutes and the other person actually had more time. And one time this person was actually caught off guard because they didn't have all their questions prepared like they needed to, and they needed to kind of make some up in the moment. So make sure you have extra questions just in case, okay? To set it up, I'm going to show you actually on the next slide here, there's an email kind of formula or template that we will give you all written out so that you have an example of what you could say. We want you to introduce yourself, let them know how you found them, and by the way, mention the referral source or name of the person who referred you in the subject line. So for example, if you were emailing or LinkedIn messaging a Georgetown alum, you want to put that in your subject line so that they know and are more likely to open it. We suggest emailing them first or LinkedIn messaging them first, and then call to follow up if you don't hear back after a certain period of time, 5 or 7 days, business-wise, so to speak, okay? Let them know that you're wanting an informational interview. You can actually use that language and those words, just by the way. Include times in the original email that you send to them that you're available, because you need to make it easy on them. If it's phone or even the video, you know, chat in this case, you set it up. You be the one that initiates it and handles all of the administrative items. Make it easy on them, okay? And be understanding, as we said during this time, if you get a little bit of a slower response time from people. Now look, I'll say this too, because people will ask us, well, you know, are people really going to respond to me? What I will tell you all, and this next slide has our template so you can take a look at it for just a minute. But what I will tell you all is that our clients are usually really pleasantly surprised by how many people are actually willing to give them time to chat with them for a few minutes. It's more a good or better response than they think right out of the box. I will say that it is a little bit like sales though. It's a law of numbers. So the more people you reach out to, the higher your rate of return, so to speak, will be. So we do encourage you to reach out to a lot of people, because your response rate may be only, you know, it may be around 40%. It may be like 20%. Don't be discouraged by people not responding to you. That will happen. That's just part of the process. Stay positive and realize that your goal is to get in front of as many people as possible that would be helpful for you, and the ball will get rolling there. Those people will introduce you to other people, et cetera, et cetera. Here on this next slide, as I said a moment ago, is a template of what you could use and say as a quick introduction about what you're looking for and who you are, okay? And you can use this, but, you know, do a variation of it. By the way, when you are, if you're sending an email, we want you to make sure that in your email, you have a signature line that is standard for your work-related or job search email address that you use typically. And we want that email signature line to have all of your contact information there, as well as a link to your LinkedIn profile. There's nothing more frustrating than if someone is trying to find your contact information, you know, to call you or whatever it is, and maybe the easiest way for them to do that is to search through their email, and then they can't contact you. That's really frustrating for people, so make sure that's all in there. Then, as part of setting them up and preparing, so the preparing part is obviously to develop your questions. These are some questions on this slide here. There are lots more that are possibilities for you to ask, but if you take a look at some of the examples here, again, it depends on if you're in job search mode or if you're looking to learn a little bit more about what this career path is like, or if you're specifically learning or wanting to learn what it's like to work at this organization in particular. You want to vary your questions based on your situation and based on the person and how they can help you depending on what their role is. But you can ask them things like, what does a typical day look like for you? What are some of the biggest challenges? How can I put my best foot forward in my search? What does this particular organization or company look for when they're hiring someone, especially these days? What are some of the buzzwords or the trends there that I should highlight or focus on in my resume? So these are some of the example questions that you can use. And as we said earlier, we do recommend sending some of these questions in advance, but then obviously you have some additional ones off to the side that you can ask as needed. In terms of doing your homework and research as part of preparing, in addition to writing up your questions, you also want to do some of your homework so that you're not going in completely cold, okay? So you want to do a little bit of research on their industry, understand, you know, recent trends, software they're using, read some articles about their industry so that you're not going in completely cold, and you have some, you know, smart, well-informed questions to ask. You want to look at their company, check out their website, any places that they've been in the media, check out their social media as well. Not just the person that you're talking to, definitely check them out on LinkedIn for sure, absolutely, but also social media for their organization, because you might find a little bit of nuggets or key things about the organization that you can bring up during the course of the conversation. You want to read a little bit more about the role that you're looking at or considering. Check out the job titles out there so that you can read some of those descriptions so that you already have a little bit of a sense of what employers are looking for. And finally, you want to check out and connect with your interviewer, the person that you're talking with. Actually, you might be the interviewer, interviewee, but you get the gist, on LinkedIn, so that you can find some common ground, things that you can talk about, understand what their background is so that you ask them, again, the right questions, and to also think about how you might be able to help them as well. That's one of the things that we always want people to do, is make sure that at the end of the conversation you say, is there any way that I can assist you too? Please don't hesitate to reach out to me if I can help you with anything, but literally ask them on that call, say, how can I help you? Is there anything I can do? Just a quick note, I did want to mention for anyone on the call today or who is listening in later, we are always happy to provide Georgetown alumni a free strategy session to help them with advice on any career goal, whatever is going on, especially during these times. So don't hesitate to email us for that, and we'll send you a link to my calendar to get that set up. It's admin@halliecrawford.com to get that going, okay? Step number 3, obviously, is to conduct the informational interview. Couple of tips here, really important. Make sure that you are early and on time. Make sure that you've got the right background and that you look professional. The lighting is good. Practice the video call with a friend or family member in advance so that everything else is set up. There's nothing worse than like your head being cut off at the top or something embarrassing like that. Stick to the time that you all have agreed to, like we discussed. Dress professionally. Have your resume and business cards. And business cards are different these days, obviously, because we're not doing in person. So business cards are not going to be as relevant, but make sure that your resume is up to date. Make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date, as well as your elevator speech too, because that's what you would use with your business card if it was an in-person session. And ask them, and I would say this depends on the conversation. Don't just automatically email them your resume. Ask them if it's okay to do so based on the conversation that you have. So just kind of bottom line with the resume is don't just make the assumption that you can just shoot it over to them. Ask them if it's okay to do so, especially if you've got specific advice you want to ask them about. Act like it's an interview and have your questions written out in a way to take notes too. That's totally okay. If you're looking at notes a little bit and just let them know in advance, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's totally fine, including on a video call, okay? When you are conducting it, and if it's impromptu at an event, obviously that's a little bit different unless you, for these days, unless you are attending an online event. You want to make sure that you kind of lead your informational interview a little bit with your elevator speech so that you give like a quick little introduction when you're starting out the conversation with them about who you are, and then what you're looking for, okay? You know, greatly appreciate your time today. I had a few questions around the situation that I'm in, which is blah, 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 looking for a position in this industry or looking to transition after things settle down into this new role, whatever it is. Behave professionally, okay? Dress professionally, like we said. The finding a wingman or woman, this is more obviously if it's in person. Be willing, I did want to bring this one up. This is the second to last one on the slide here, is be willing to talk with people and connect with people that normally you may not have been as willing to do so in the past. So I really want to encourage you all to kind of put yourself out there a little bit more, because one of the obstacles we often find with our clients is they're like, this is not fun and it's uncomfortable, and we totally understand that and get that. But we feel like it's really important for you to push yourself out there a little bit more. Just get a couple under your belt, even if it's just one or two, to get the ball rolling, and you will get more comfortable doing this over time. So if you can just get one kind of, you know, check the box with it, the ball will start rolling. You'll feel a little bit more comfortable and confident doing this, okay? So just put yourself out there to do this. And then finally, as part of your preparation and conducting the informational interview, you want to think about a couple of things that you could, not just in asking them how you can help them closer to the end of the call, but identify 2 or 3 things that you could say to them that could add value to whatever it is that they might need during this time. You know, is there an article that you could share with them or something that you read that you wanted to mention to them? So think about a couple of things that you could say to them as well that could add some value to your conversation for them. And at the conclusion, after you've conducted and gone through the questions, you want to ask them these final kind of closing things. How can I help you? Ask them if there's anyone else that they think it would be helpful for you to speak with. Get some more additional questions, additional connections, I should say, if possible. And here's one of the critical things that our clients, before they come to us, they don't always know or do correctly. If you look at the middle of this slide here, the ideal, everyone, is not for them to just say, oh, sure, send me your resume and I'll pass it along and, you know, we'll see what happens. Ideally, if they're willing to introduce you to someone, you want to be in control. You want to have the ball in your court. So ask them if they could send an email introduction or a LinkedIn connection introduction to the 2 of you, because then you have their contact information. It's more active. The other person will be more likely to help you and reach back out to you because there's that accountability there, okay? So ideally, if you're asking for and talking about follow-up, you want to press them for that email introduction. If they're not comfortable doing so, of course, you can't force them to do anything, but that is more active and gives you a little bit more control. And then finally, you want to design how you can stay in touch with them after this. So ask them, can I stay in touch with you as I progress in my search if I have any other quick questions? And if they say yes, what's the best way to do so? Is it a LinkedIn message or something else? So design what the follow-up would be together. Don't just kind of say, okay, great, thanks for your time, and rush off. Close it out really nicely. Number 4, or step number 4, would be to stay in touch with them over time. Obviously, write them an immediate email, you know, thank you note, appreciate your time. We highly recommend sending a thank you note that's handwritten too, that says something a little bit or a variation on the thank you, because that just makes such a good impression, okay? Send your resume if appropriate based on the conversation like we said. Make sure you connect with them on LinkedIn. Remember to always write a message, not just having that standard invite. I don't believe LinkedIn has fixed this, but with your cell phone, if you are connecting with someone on LinkedIn, on the app, the last time I checked, this may have changed, so don't hold me to it totally, but with the app, I believe that if you send an invitation to connect with someone, you can't write a message in there. It just goes directly to them without it. So better to do this on your desktop. Make sure that you follow up with any of their referrals that they gave you immediately and keep each person posted along the way. Let the person know, okay, I spoke with so-and-so, thank you so much, this is what they said. Send them a card or note in the next month, for example, after you've spoken with them, to just check in and say, hope it all is well. Thank you so much again for, your time. And then check in with them every 2 to 3 months approximately. Again, it depends on the conversation and what referrals they gave you and what the action steps are. But different ways to stay in touch with people are to send them an article, refer someone else to them, give them just a quick update on your job search, or if you updated your resume or LinkedIn profile, let them know that. Keep them posted on any connections they make for you. And during this kind of difficult time, another way to check in with people or stay in touch with them is to just check in with them and say, hey, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do to help you or pitch in? Okay. I don't know why this one is here. I apologize for this. For some reason, I think my LinkedIn, yeah, sorry about that. I think my PowerPoint just kind of glitched there. Okay, so staying in touch, we talked about the articles, everything else. Let me go to this. Okay, good. All right, so we're back on track with the PowerPoint slide. Sorry about that. So a thank you note template, one of the things that you could send to them, this can be kind of a short and sweet template or example, if you will, of what you can say to them as a quick note of thanks for their time, okay? Thanks for taking the time to talk with me. Include in there, just like you would, with a regular interview, include in there something that you all talked about, something that, stuck out in your mind that you want to remind them of to help you be memorable in their minds as well. Okay, so quick and short and sweet, keep it easy. But also, by the way, if there was anything that you promised to them too, obviously make sure that you follow up with that in a timely manner so that you get back to them right away while things are still fresh. Let's talk about step number 5, and this is our last step, okay? And then we'll start to we've got a couple of free tools for you all, and then we'll start to move to the Q&A in just a moment here. But one of the things that we find with our clients that they kind of forget to do until maybe they're on informational interview like number 3 or 4 is to really stay organized and keeping track of who they've spoken to, when it was, what the follow-up is, and what was said. So we highly recommend that you maintain an Excel spreadsheet. We like Excel best, or some variation of that, that you can see all your tasks kind of in one place versus in Word, that you've got the person's contact information as well as their LinkedIn, profile link, the dates of communication so far, keep good notes on this, whatever information was shared and your plans for following up, referrals obviously that they gave you, whatever next follow-up action there is, and make sure that you update your sheet once a week. So one of the things we wanted to ask everyone, and this may or may not be relevant for all of you based on if you're in really active job search mode or not, but we're curious for the second poll here, Sarah, if we could pull that up, that would be great. How many of you have a weekly schedule, give or take, doesn't have to be perfect, that you use for networking to keep you, kind of informed, if you will, or kind of like as a teaser or a reminder of, okay, I need to conduct this networking effort and make sure. So as we do this poll, I did want to mention, let me just share this on the next slide here as you guys are filling that out, that we do have a worksheet that we give to our clients, and we're happy to share this with you all, that will help you develop this, track things more easily, create that schedule, all of that. Okay, so Sarah, how are we doing with the poll?
So it looks like asking, do you have a weekly schedule for networking? 16% of you said yes, and 84% said no.
Okay. All right, so thank you for sharing that and everyone for participating. We greatly appreciate it. So we do recommend, even when you're not in job search mode, it's a weekly schedule. Now, does that mean you have to spend 10 hours every single week? Absolutely not, no. We would recommend you devote 20 minutes to networking every week, 30 minutes. If you're not in active job search mode, you may want to bump that up to about an hour, give or take, again, how active you are job seeking if that's the case. But networking is critical, even if you're not looking for a new job. And this is a good time to be working on this, to get those LinkedIn connections up to that number of 500. That is that magic number that recruiters and employers look for now. This is a great time to start expanding your network. So make it a part of your weekly schedule, even beyond the times that we're in today, okay? So let's start to move to taking action and writing down and identifying some action steps for yourselves. So if you could go ahead and get out your pen and paper, that would be great. We would like you to write down 2 action steps that you will take as a result of being here today. Just want to read this quote to you really quickly because it's a great one, and we want to remind you that successful people, it's not that they didn't have any obstacles and things were just, you know, peaches and cream so easy for them, okay? It's that they knew and understood how to overcome those and get around them. So as Michael Jordan says, this is a great quote, I really like this, there's always going to be roadblocks, everyone has them, but the obstacles don't have to stop you. If you run into a wall, don't turn around and give up, figure out how to climb over it, work around it, whatever it is. So even if with these informational interviews, the first few, let's say, you don't get a response or it's a no or whatever it is, plug through. Know that these are possible to get. People are more willing to give you time, I think especially during these times as well, over the phone or video chat. So push yourself to start taking action on these, even if it's, look, I'm going to go through my connections and get one set up in the next couple of weeks. All right, so make sure you write those down. And Sarah, if we can start to move to the Q&A, if you all can go ahead and submit your questions to us in the chat box, I guess it is, or Sarah, if there's another place you want them to do that, that would be great.
Yep, using the questions area of the GoToWebinar system. So you can send in your questions right there to me, and then I'll share those with Hallie.
Okay, good. Yeah, I always forget because I use different systems, so I forget which is which. So I'm ready whenever you guys are.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hallie. This is great. So to start off, what's the purpose of staying in touch so that you stay on their mind as someone who's job hunting? How do you avoid becoming an annoyance? How do you follow up? What if the person you're doing an informational interview with really doesn't have a vested interest in your progress? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Great question. So a couple of things. The purpose would be to stay top of mind, obviously, if they hear about a job opening somewhere that they think of you, right? A good way to stay in front of people is if you're regularly posting things on LinkedIn and you're connected with them, then you will show up on their feed. So a good way to do that is to start posting once a week on LinkedIn. It doesn't have to be all the time. That helps you prevent, you know, not being an annoyance. But once a week, post an article, write a quick commentary on that article, write something, post an award or something else that would be useful. That's one way. To not be an annoyance, don't contact them every single week. You know, once a month, give or take, is enough. Again, depending on how vested they are and your success. And you'll be able to gauge that based on how warm the connection is, obviously, and how the conversation goes. If they're not as invested in your success, you check in with them once a month. If for some reason the conversation didn't really go that well and you feel like, they're not that willing to help me, I probably shouldn't bug them, then just don't bug them anymore. Use common sense with it to a certain extent. But please know that, you know, most people are more willing to hear from you than you think. You just need to gauge that. Oh, and by the way, that's part of, you kind of can design it at the end of the conversation. Is it okay that if I check in with you, you know, once a month or something like that, then, you know, you kind of checked it out with them a little bit too. Great question.
That's great. Thank you. What is the best time to request the interview? Do you suggest during work hours or evenings or weekends?
Yeah, I think during these times, things are different, right? People working from home, they may be a little bit more flexible in a way. What I would do is I would offer them daytime work times and also say in that same email, or if evening times are better, I also have these times available. For some people, evening times, they're not going to want to do it because they have kids, for example, and they've got to do that. But for other people, that might be better. So just give them the options of both. Weekends, I tend to steer clear of. I just don't even offer that because I think most people want to keep those sacred. Good question.
Thank you. This is an interesting insight from someone who's often asked to give informational interviews, so sort of on the other side of things. And they say that their biggest pet peeve is when someone gives me their entire life story or work history as a background as to why they're asking for this informational interview. Do you have advice for a polite way to cut them off if they start doing this?
Yeah, so from the other side, thank you for sharing that because it's so true. I've had people get on the phone with me and just start rambling, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, so do you have a question, and what's your question? Because I need to get to that because I don't have 2 hours. So a polite way to, and what I've done is, when you can find a quick opening, great, hey, I really appreciate you sharing all of that. And just in the interest of time, I really do need to be mindful of my time today because I've got a meeting afterwards. Can we go ahead and get to the questions? That would be fantastic. Something like that. I don't have a hard of a time interrupting people because of what I do, because we do interrupt our clients. Sometimes we have to do that. And I get that that's a different scenario. But I think if you do it politely and just kind of cut in and say, that is great. Thank you for sharing. Let me know, what's your first question? How can I best help you? That could be another way that you can kind of cut in and say, so how can I best help you today? What's your first question? Boom, then you can keep moving. That's great. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Any other pieces of advice for the person who is the informational interview giver as opposed to the person who's asking the question?
Yep. Make sure that if they send you questions in advance, give a little bit of thought to them because the less you ramble, the faster the time will go to, and be mindful of your time. If the person does not send you questions in advance, what I have done actually is I've actually asked them to do so and said, yes, I'm happy to chat with you. This is how much time I can give. I'm always specific about I can give 20 minutes. And, here are the times, or, if they sent me times, great. But then I give them times right then and there to reduce the kind of back and forth. And then I also say, please send me your top 3 or 4 questions that you want to get answered, because then I'm communicating with them that I need that, and it helps keep our time and use it wisely as well. So those are some of the things. Hopefully that helps too. It's kind of guide them to do the things that we're telling them to do today.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, very helpful. This is such a nice question. Could you suggest other ways to return or offer value to those contacts who have helped you? How can you pay it forward or pay it back to them?
Yeah, great question. I love this one. So any advice that you come across or advice that you might want to give them for whatever's going on in their professional or personal lives that came up in the course of the conversation, a book that you saw that they might enjoy, you can either send the actual book to them or just a link. And say, hey, I thought you might like this. I just wanted to point it out. Here's an article that might be useful for you in your search. Send them another connection, for example. So any kind of information or advice that you could provide, and even in some cases, just a, hey, how are you doing? I just wanted to, check in with you. Is there anything I can do to kind of pitch in and help you with something? One of the things that we've been suggesting to our job-seeking clients these days is, and a client did this in Chicago, she's in communications, one of the places she was applying for, and they said, our hiring is kind of on hold for right now, or just give us a couple more weeks. We had her reach back out to them and say, no problem, I totally understand. Is there anything I can do to help you write a quick, marketing piece around COVID, though, what's going on? So offer to, jump in and help them with something kind of work-wise, too. That would be a really kind thing to do, something short and sweet and simple, but that you could actually leverage your expertise to help them with it.
That's great. Thank you. And yeah, such a nice question. So I'm glad that was asked. Another question for you, Hallie. What would be the best and most effective way to contact organizations when you just don't know anyone at the organization, but you're interested in doing an informational interview with the people who are there, or there's a job that catches your eye and you want to know more about it? Do you reach out to just the recruiter there or like the HR office? What's the best way to go about getting an informational interview there?
Yeah, so I would, to a certain extent, try to tackle different angles. So if you can't find a connection there, even through like Georgetown Alumni Association, LinkedIn, or whatever, and it's completely cold, I would try to reach out to someone in HR or a recruiter and just see what they say, because, there's no harm in just asking. Worst they can do is say no or not respond to you. If you don't get any traction there, you could find someone else who is in like your same role or level, but not the person that you actually want to talk to, but to kind of get your foot in the door, like almost like a peer, if you will, or a colleague that's at that organization, and say, you just wanted to chat with them for a few minutes to get a little bit more information on the company. So you could contact that kind of person cold as well. And you could even try to look for maybe who the possible hiring manager would be. If it is for a job search, you got to be professional and cautious about how you word, what you're going to say to them and everything else. But if you don't ask, you'll never know what the answer is. So in my book, it's better to just put something short and sweet out there on LinkedIn to those different kind of categories, if you will.
Wonderful. Thank you. Just a quick question from someone just about your presentation. You'd mentioned the 500 number being like a magic number. Can you just go over that one more time, please?
Absolutely. And I'm just going to bring up this slide here too, so you guys have my contact information as well. By the way, if other questions do come up later, don't hesitate to email us. Happy to answer. The magic number of 500 is something that employers and recruiters more specifically are saying that it makes you look more connected, more, that you care more about your professional development and all of that. So getting your connections up to that number of 500 is actually an important thing to be doing. What that means is that we're going to be connecting with people in most cases that we don't necessarily know. And technically on the flip side of this, LinkedIn has always said don't connect with people that you don't know. You can start to do that a little bit more, even if you don't know them, at all. If it's someone within your industry that you think would be useful to be connected with, it is okay to start working towards that magic number of 500, and we actually want you to do that. I can't say exactly like, I don't think, for example, that if you apply for a job and you have 500 connections, you're suddenly, going to be higher up listed, in the pile of resumes there. But it's something more kind of from, can't think of the right word, but from the perspective of the recruiter or the employer, that you look like you take your career and networking, seriously. And so they do value that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Hallie. Everyone, Hallie did mention a handout, and it actually is in the GoToWebinar system. So feel free, you can find that and pull it down for yourselves. I'll also include it in the webinar follow-up email, so you have a copy of it. I'll include Hallie's contact information as well, ways to follow up with her. Please do reach out with additional questions and to keep in touch with her. I know she's an avid LinkedIn user too, so feel free to connect with her on LinkedIn. And before we hop off, just a quick plug from my side, Alumni Career Services wise, in terms of using the alumni network, we have two really great tools for you guys to use that I will include in the webinar follow-up email. The first one is our Georgetown Alumni LinkedIn group. It has more than 30,000 Hoyas in it, and it's a closed group, so you have to ask to join, but I'll include the link to that in the webinar follow-up email. Feel free to join that. Looking forward to having y'all in that community. It's a great place to, like Hallie said, post things yourself, connect with fellow Hoyas, see what the news is and what's going on. And I post frequently in there as well, so ways to keep up with Alumni Career Services. And then the second tool and platform to use is Hoya Gateway. That is our student alumni and alumni to alumni networking platform. And it is a community of Hoyas who are really engaged and able to sort by industry and type of area of interest, to be able to find folks who are in your line of work, or to find folks who are, who you want to do informational interviews with. There's also an alumni job board in Hoya Gateway. It's a fantastic way too for you to give back and connect with students who right now, more than ever, being remote, are looking to the alumni community for support and help. So I very much encourage y'all to join that community and be part of a community of engaged Hoyas there. Again, I'll include those resources as well as everything Hallie shared in the webinar follow-up email. Hallie, thanks again for being with us today. Any final words before I close us out?
Go in baby steps, everybody. It doesn't have to be all at once. Just take it step by step, get one set up, and go from there. That's all you need to do. It'll get easier, I promise. And good luck with everything during this tough time, too. We're here for you.
Absolutely. Yes, we are. Thank you so much, Hallie, for being with us today. It's always a pleasure to work with you. And thanks to all of you for taking the time out of your days to join us. It's wonderful to have you on the line. Looking forward to being in touch. Sending you all a wish for a happy and a healthy week ahead. Hoya Saksa.
Thank you. Bye, guys.